Our next speaker is Archie Wolfman, who is a PhD student in film studies and that at Queen Mary's University in London. He already presented aspects of his thesis, as for instance sound and memory in contemporary Holocaust cinema. Today, he is going to look, if I understood it correctly, on the transformation of the figure of the dybbuk into the dybbuk box. That is, his title is The Dybbuk Box as Case Study of Digital Network Memory of the Holocaust. The floor is yours.
Hello, thank you everyone. You can all hear me, can't you? Yep, good. Okay, so the traditional dybbuk of Yiddish folklore pre-exists the internet by hundreds and hundreds of years. Conversely, in this talk, what I'm going to focus on, the dybbuk box, emerged in the digital era in 2003 on eBay. The orange-coloured box on the slide there is one instance of the dybbuk box. That's what it looks like. Since 2003, the dybbuk box has proliferated online as a form of online participatory storytelling. This storytelling involves an object purported to be haunted by a dybbuk and implicitly haunted by traumatic memory of the Holocaust within these online stories. So, yeah, the original eBay listing of the dybbuk box contains a story within that eBay listing about how the box was bought from an 103-year-old Holocaust survivor. And this narrative grounding in the Holocaust kind of continues through to mentions of the dybbuk box online to the present day. And so this research that I'm presenting here is very much in the early stages. I feel the need to present to you a lot of like raw information. I'm guessing the audience here might not know what a dybbuk box is. I'm not sure. I don't think so. So yeah, so I'm going to try and explain a lot of what it is, and then give some preliminary analysis or sort of theoretical perspectives or ethical perspectives. Yeah. So here is just a little. I can use this thing, not the space bar. How's that? Yep. So yeah, this is just some preliminary information about the dybbuk box. One thing before I sort of go into the proper description of what the dybbuk box is. The dybbuk box is a work of fiction, and it exists outside of official institutions of both Holocaust commemoration and academic history. So it's very much... there was a talk yesterday talking about the bifurcation of memory, this idea from Hoskins. So institutional memory on the one hand, and then, like, I don't know, memory in the wild on the other hand, like unruly memory which is just out there on the internet. In my view, one of the things that I think is important about the dybbuk box is that at least in some cases it provides the context or the platform in a digital space for a vernacular and interactive engagement with Holocaust history and memory. Conversely, it's very important to say that with good reason, a lot of the online iterations of the dybbuk box can be viewed as a crude commodification or appropriation of both Jewish culture and Holocaust memory. So throughout this presentation, maybe just want to draw attention to the ways in which both this pessimistic and more optimistic outlook on the dybbuk box exist. So yeah, on the one hand, commodification, and on the other, vernacular, interactive digital memory. So what is a dybbuk in traditional folklore before the internet? Traditionally, a dybbuk is a spirit of an unrestful soul which possesses or haunts a living person. No known folkloric accounts of the dybbuk before the early 2000s mention it as possessing or haunting a box or any other object. One of the most well-known, if not the most well-known incarnations of the dybbuk is in Russian Jewish author S. Ansky's play The Dybbuk, Between Two Worlds. The image on the left is from a Russian 1922 production of Ansky's The Dybbuk. And then on the right of the screen is a still from the 1937 film adaptation of the dybbuk, which it was made in Poland and performed in Yiddish. And so, the film is a particularly striking cinematic snapshot of pre-war Jewish culture and life. scholars have remarked how this particular film, by the way, my PhD research is in film studies, so maybe this explains why I'm giving you this context, why I'm interested in it. But I do, this is relevant context for the dybbuk box itself. So scholars who've written on the dybbuk, the film version, have said the phrase that it's contaminated. That phrase is from Susanna Juban. It's contaminated by the knowledge of what befell the majority of its Jewish cast and crew. In the words of Ira Königsberg, the 1937 film, to quote, is a Kaddish, a prayer for the dead that asks us to remember its dead. As Königsberg's elegiac remarks about the 1937 film attest, the dybbuk of traditional folklore exists as part of a centuries-old narrative tradition, which, to put this in poetic terms, allows the living to communicate with and through the dead. And so you could read dybbuks as having a distinct ghostliness to them. And just to make it clear, I'm implying that this sense of ghostliness and the ways in which dybbuks become a prison through which the past and present interact, I'm saying this carries forward to the digital dybbuk box. And so if you think about the subtitle of Ansky's play, the image on the left, the subtitle is Between Two Worlds, and so I'm going to sort of highlight ways in which you can interpret that phrase, between two worlds, between not only between past and present, between dead and living, but also between, let's say, user and interface, for example. And so, yeah, as I've mentioned, this ghostliness of the dybbuk becomes accelerated into the digital era with the dybbuk box. The many permutations of the dybbuk box online are complex and convoluted. I've put this slide here both to convey some information, but also to just demonstrate to you the complex networks of this dybbuk box online. Because you might not, maybe you'll get distracted by what I'm saying now because you're trying to digest the information on the slide. But it's an illustrative point to show you that it's a complex interconnection, and this is a simplified version as well. So if you draw your attention to roughly the middle of the slide, June 2003, that's the first instance of this online dybbuk box. It was put on eBay in 2003, and as I said, the original eBay listing contained quite a lengthy story, and part of which was that this dybbuk box was bought from a 103-year-old Holocaust survivor. In the early 2000s, the box went through multiple owners, and so the buyers of the first original eBay listing sold it shortly after. I think this slide will show you. Yeah, this is, as Thomas used in his presentation, this is the Wayback Machine, this is the archived version of the second eBay listing, which copy and pastes the story from the second. As far as I've been able to find, maybe I don't know how to use Wayback Machine properly, but as far as I've been able to find, I cannot find the archived original eBay listing. I can only find the second version, which is the one here. Moving on. And so since the early 2000s, another example of ways in which stories about dybbuks have traveled in digital spaces is there are many films about, these are many horror films about the dybbuk and about dybbuk boxes. What's important to highlight here is that the third owner of the dybbuk box, his name is Jason Haxton. He bought it in 2004 and then wrote a book about it in 2011. Let me go back here. Can you see? Maybe you can't see. Where is it? I'm confused by my own diagram.
I think it's over there.
Yeah. So yeah. This man called Jason Haxton, the third owner of the box, he wrote a book about it, and basically in 2011, Hollywood bought the copyright of the dybbuk box from this gentleman, Jason Haxton, and made this horror film about it called The Possession. That's in the top center left. I can go into this in more detail, maybe in questions, but I don't have time to discuss all these movies. Again, I'm just trying to illustrate the way in which stories about dybbuks and dybbuk boxes have traveled in the digital age. And so when I'm talking about the intellectual property rights of the dybbuk box and this man, Jason Haxton, selling the rights to Hollywood, maybe that's an appropriate stage to just raise ethical concerns about both Holocaust memory and Jewish culture being commodified. To illustrate this, here is the cover of Jason Haxton's book. At least in my view, it's you could fairly easily give a visual analysis of this to say that it's a sort of voyeuristic or ethnographic gaze on Jewish culture. For example, the Hebrew-style Latin script, and the way the box is opening, sort of tempting your gaze towards its contents, etc. Criticisms of commodification could be continued when the dybbuk box has appeared on many paranormal reality television programs, because the dybbuk box is essentially a ghost story, so it's very popular on paranormal reality TV. The first instance of it is right at I think it's the bottom of the diagram, yeah, on 2011 on a show called Paranormal Witness. And then the bottom right of the diagram concerns all of its other paranormal reality TV show appearances. One of the most prominent paranormal television shows it's been on is all the shows associated with the man in the top right of the image. He's called Zach Baggins, and he is a paranormal investigator and television host. He has a museum, a paranormal museum in Las Vegas in the USA, and that's where the current dybbuk box currently resides, in an exhibit there. And my opening slide was a still from one of his television programs. So let me just move on in my script. And so it's in all of the contexts that I've mentioned in which Holocaust memory features most prominently. That's in the 2 original eBay listings, in Hexton's book, in Zach Baggins' reality TV shows, as well as in some of the films I've mentioned. This is where the story continues to develop. Onto my next slide. What I'm going to show you here, if I can get the clip to play, is... let me just play the clip and then I'll carry on talking. Maybe I can't play the clip. What this is a walkthrough of... Oh, there you go. Thank you. Yep. What this is a walkthrough of eBay. I think the search is from the 9th of May. The search term was dybbuk box on eBay. This was on American eBay. And these are all essentially copycat dybbuk boxes from the original 2003 eBay listing. This is related to this is an example of one of the dybbuk boxes. It's got quite an elaborate story. This relates to... Sorry, can I move to the next slide, please? Yeah, this is the British eBay. And the next slide again, please. Oh, yeah, yeah. And so this trend of copycat dybbuk boxes on eBay relates to another trend, which is basically a trend on YouTube where YouTubers buy these dybbuk boxes from eBay and put videos of them online opening these boxes. And the basic concept is when you open the box, you become cursed or haunted by the dybbuk or the spirit that lives inside of it. And so, both with the trend of putting the dybbuk boxes on eBay, the copycat dybbuk boxes, as well as this YouTube trend, as I said, I'm at the preliminary stages of this research. Both with eBay, the eBay listings are ephemeral, so it's hard to catalog them, archive them, and also analyze them. And also with the YouTube trend, actually, there are hundreds of these videos. So just to demonstrate a point, if you change the search filter at the top there to display the most recently uploaded video, you'll probably find something that's uploaded in the past day, if not weeks or months. So it's a constant ongoing trend. And some of these have millions of views. So yeah, it's both the ephemerality of the data and also the vast amount of it. And so what I'm going to talk about for the rest of the talk is what I have found so far on a particular YouTube video. Is that what I'm talking about? Yes, it is. So, oh yeah, here's just me walking through YouTube and all these. Can I go to the next slide, please? Thank you. Yep, thanks. Yep, so now I'm going to talk about this YouTube video. This YouTube video was uploaded in 2020. This channel has millions of subscribers, and this video's got millions of views. Just to qualify, this is a YouTube channel dedicated to discussing paranormal stories, basically. And so obviously it's not a YouTube channel dedicated to serious academic history. What I do want to highlight about it is that you could, if you go into the comment section of these videos, you can read into them an interactive and user-generated and vernacular engagement with Holocaust memory in digital space. I'm throwing that out there. That could be contested. So you can decide what you think about that. Again, we have the video playing. So can I move to the next slide, please? Thank you. I factored in too much interactivity into my presentation, maybe. Yeah, this slide's great. This slide's great. So maybe what's the best way to do this? Again, there are lots of these comments, and this is me just manually searching through them. I don't have any digital tools or software or whatever to go through all these comments. The ones that I'm interested in, there's two in particular, and then they convey a similar message. You can read it. It's at the top of the slide. And so it's basically, yeah, underlying this idea that if this box indeed within its fictional story was owned by a Holocaust survivor, then that sort of underlines its horror credentials, basically. And just to give a brief analysis of some of the types of comments that are on these videos, there are, like, as often there is with discussions of the Holocaust in digital spaces, there are like troll comments or anti-Semitic comments. There's one roundabout in the centre there, up far on the far left, someone saying, "Hey, what's the Holocaust?" I do think this comment, for example, it's slightly more complex than someone who is just a card-carrying anti-Semite, but we can discuss this maybe later, because I want to highlight some other comments here. So, at least in my perspective, that there is a reasonably in-depth and at least good faith and interactive ongoing exchange of knowledge about the Holocaust, which is demonstrated in these comments. For example, someone suggests that the original owner of the box might have PTSD. Someone demonstrates basic knowledge of how concentration camps work. They say that the survivor would not have been able to have taken this box into a camp. Someone connects the idea of the evil of Nazism to the spirit that's contained in this box. Someone says in these comments, I'm sort of translating everything they say into more like academic language because there's spelling mistakes, etc. Again, someone says that Holocaust survivors and their testimony is unique and it should be respected for its authenticity. And so, yeah, I don't have time to go into more depth, I don't think, but it's just to underline that whilst the dybbuk box is a work of fiction, at least in my perspective, what I think is complex and noteworthy about it is that I think online users don't engage with it as though it's a work of fiction. Complexly and problematically, both the supernatural elements of this dybbuk box as well as the historical grounding in the Holocaust are experienced as credible or factual by, I think, most of these online users that engage with it, or not most of them, some of them. And in fact, in many cases, it's the discourse of factuality and historicity which I think draws people into the box and by implication draws people into a serious and good faith engagement with Holocaust memory and history. So I'm drawing to a close now. I'm possibly running over. And yeah, so just to underline that again, what I think is noteworthy here is that a vernacular digital engagement with the Holocaust was prompted or it occurs within the context of a fictional narrative. Personally, I'm of the view that to engage with history, as well as absolutely crucially requiring a factual empirical study, also involves imaginative and emotional and narrative dimensions. And so that's, the beginnings of a suggestion as to why something like the dybbuk box is worth serious academic study. So to conclude, to return to my original question, to what degree does the dybbuk box represent commodification on the one hand and digital vernacular memory on the other? Well, it's possible it represents both in a very complex and problematic way, that both of those tendencies coexist within the dybbuk box. And so to return to the subtitle of Esansky's play, the title is The Dybbuk Between Two Worlds. There are many senses in which the dybbuk box exists between two worlds, you could say, between user and interface, between immateriality and materiality, and as I've framed it in my terms, between crude appropriation on the one hand and serious good faith engagement with history on the other. So yeah, despite the dybbuk box's wide online circulation, one of the areas in which it has not proliferated is academic study, so at least as far as I'm aware, so hopefully this talk is, maybe will prompt more academic study, so that's my talk. Thank you.